This is all right. So we're I guess we're ready for the interview. This is the day after the state of the city, and so I really don't have a opening comment or opening statement. I'll just go right to the questions that you may have. And let me know if you cannot hear me, so I can adjust some things. Waiting on a question. Yes.
The first question is from Mark Ackerman from Channel 5.
Mm-hmm.
What specifically is Cleveland Police doing to improve the homicide unit? Chief Williams will not do interviews with us to explain the process.
Well, I would have to get that information. The question is, what specifically is the police department doing to improve, I guess, homicide investigations? I'm assuming that is. And there's the reporter is saying that the chief has refused to do an interview with them. I would have to ask the chief specifically what they're doing in terms of if they've made some adjustments or changes and things like that. I do know that they go about investigating homicides and other shootings, whether they result in homicides or not. I know they do that in collaboration with the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor comes out to the scene. I know they have a crime scene people who come out and collect forensic evidence to compile the evidence. They do the interviews of witnesses that may be at the scene, and then they follow up on tips. Now, those are things that I know that they do. Now, they may be doing some other things that I'm not aware of, or they haven't even told me about, but those are the things I know about.
Mayor, the next question is from Dan DeRose from Channel 19. Mayor, what do you want your legacy to be?
The question is, what do I want my legacy to be? I'm not, I really don't worry about that, be honest with you, not to the extent that I'm trying to define what it is. I guess once I get out of the day-to-day stuff and really retire and get my adopt the attitude of retirement, then that would be probably a better question at that time. But right now, I'm just continuing to work and do what I do. And I think in my state of the city right now, my focus is on leaving this city and passing this baton off to whoever the next mayor is, so that they have a good opportunity to be successful. And that's what I tried to lay out last night.
Mayor Theodora Monaghan, what are your thoughts on the charter amendment?
What are my thoughts on the charter amendment? I'm assuming you're talking about what is that, issue 24, I believe it is. I think it's horrible. The charter amendment will be a disaster, in terms of not only uh, uh, in terms of leadership of the Division of Police. It will be a disaster in terms of operational um, outcomes, and it will be a disaster in terms of morale. It will be it's kind of difficult for someone to be in leadership role and not have any authority and or to have whatever they do be subject to be overturned or vetoed by someone else who does not have the prerequisite um, understanding or the prerequisite um, training as a police officer. I guess in that sense, if I were a patrolman and knowing that um, I couldn't be disciplined except by some civilian board or commission, then I think listening to my immediate or the chief would not be something that I would be as much concerned about. And then to have uh, this civilian commission or board have the authority to fire anybody just simply because they won't cooperate with them, I think is kind of authoritarian, and it's just on its face. I imagine just based on that language that they could fire, discipline any city employee. I imagine that would, I'm assuming, since they did not exclude, to my understanding, the elected officials, that could be me or a council president or a councilman if we don't cooperate. And what is cooperation? What is cooperation? You don't do what I tell you to do. So it's very problematic, and not questioning intent when people look at how do they having some kind of review uh, of activity of police department. That's why we've entered into a consent decree. That's why we agreed in the consent decree to have a civilian board to help with policies and other kind of thing. But this takes it much further than that, to the point that you really only have this authoritarian civilian group that has the ability to, I guess, determine who gets hired, who gets fired, training, policies, all types of things that not be conducive to the division of police in terms of leadership and operation and fighting crime. And I don't believe that it would go anywhere in regards to police and community relationship. It would be a disaster.
Mayor Theodore, if she agrees.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Darby O'Morrow from FCB Radio Network.
Mhm.
How did you feel knowing that last night was your last State of the City address?
The question is, how did I feel knowing that last night was my last State of City address? Um, it's, I don't know exactly, because I haven't fully adopted retirement. I know it's my last State of the City, which in that sense, um, I did approach it, and I did approach it in a way that I knew that. I think it's more relaxing, um, in a sense that I know I won't be doing it again, but I haven't fully adopted the attitude of retirement because I still have a few months left and quite a bit of stuff to do, by the way. Uh, so um, so it's kind of hard to say. I'm in twixt in between, but in general, it was more relaxing, if I could just define it in one word.
This is Lee Chillicothe from the nonprofit news outlet.
Mhm.
What will you do if the bully pulpit of the mayor's office to promote the city's new opt-in recycling program. People are mistrustful of the city due to the recycling program canceled in April of last year, and they may be unaware of the new program, which hasn't been as widely promoted as it could be.
Well, the organization who promotes recycling wants to know, what am I going to do as a bully pulpit to on the opt-in around recycling? And implication is that people don't trust the city because we had to stop what we were doing and go and at that time. I will also kind of ask you the same question: is what are you going to do? Because a lot of the confusion that people have is because of people not fully explaining why the city had to stop the recycling. And when you look at it and you see that this is just not a city of Cleveland issue, this is an issue based on the marketability of recyclable materials, and really the fact that the way that we were doing it at first was greatly dependent on having a market for what we were recycling. And when that bottom fell out of that market and the cost of recycling was began to increase and increase and increase, not just Cleveland, but many cities and organizations just got out of the business. We didn't get out of the business, we just put a halt to it until we could reevaluate how to best do recycling under this new economic and market conditions. And so opt-in was the phase that we chose. So is not what I'm going to do in regards to it, because it's the policy that we have set that we're going to allow people to opt in. That does a couple of things. It allows for those who are serious about recycling to actually do it, as compared to though just let's giving everybody a blue garbage can, and then only 10% of the people use it for recycling. So we then had to go and empty the thing and treat it as if it were not recycled, simply because people were not in compliance. And you know, council did not pass any measures that would allow us to penalize people for not doing recycling properly. So under that whole dynamic, the best route for us to go is for people who really want to do recycling to opt in. And then when they opt in, we will identify the type of materials that should be recycled based on the economy and the market at that time. And then that will allow us to have a better recycling program, and the compliance will be almost 100% as opposed to 10%. But that is also a message that those of you who understand that should be getting out, just not the mayor on a bully pulpit, because we'll do our part. But there are bully pulpits all over the place, particularly with people with credibility, when you are perceived to be leaders or advocates in that field.
Mayor Justin Boggs from Spectrum News. Do you still expect to be involved in politics after you leave office? And also, do you expect to advocate for gun control?
Do I expect to be in politics after I leave office or advocate for gun control? My expectation when I leave office is to do nothing. And that's exactly what I plan to do, nothing. And then I will go wherever it leads me. But I have no plans for retirement other than to do nothing. And whatever the calling is, that's where I go. It is a misperception to think that I want gun control. What I want is responsible gun ownership. You know, I'm fully aware of the Second Amendment and the Supreme Court's ruling on that, and the advocates behind that, but I do believe that that the way in which it is implemented, and it does have an extremist point of view, and his extremist point of view has caused tremendous local problems, because we have to deal with the fallout of these philosophical points of view that have no practical application to safety on urban streets. So this is more, for me, not about gun control, but more about how do people responsibly own guns, and then how does the federal government actually define what that responsible gun ownership looks like. And as you know, we before the state of Ohio passed its laws saying that no local community could pass any laws in regards to guns, we had a series of ordinances on the books around no assault weapons, and they used to call them Saturday night specials. You couldn't sell a a handgun in the city of Cleveland. There was negligence associated with not properly securing a firearm in a house, and if a child got hold of it, all these kinds of things. And we did that based on what our reality was, and how we believe that we could have a responsible way in which people should own guns, and what guns were the type of guns that we believed in Cleveland was appropriate, meaning, like I said, no assault weapons, owning assault weapons, buying assault weapons, things like that. So it's more about, with me, is not gun control so much, because people are going to have them, and in my opinion, people have a right to have them, but there are circumstances in which it becomes completely impractical, and the easy availability of them is a major problem, and the trafficking of them, whether it's legal to do it this way or illegal, is a major problem, because it winds up in the hands of people who should not have guns, whether they're criminals or whether they're children. I often say that I can go out on the street right now and give a kid $400, and before the end of the day, I'd have me a Glock. Just that easy. And that should not be. So that is, something's wrong there. And that's not a Second Amendment issue to me. That is the issue of public safety.
Mark Ackerman from Channel 5, what are your priorities for your final months in office?
Priorities for final months in office. I get, we have this Recovery Act money. We've developed our approach to that. We've submitted it to council. They have to appropriate it. We are going to introduce, and council will have to pass some form of a temporary budget for the first quarter of next year. That we'll have a transfer ordinance where we'll be transferring money from one department to another based on who overspend, who underspend, all those kind of things. And these are the kind of things that have to be done in order to set up the next administration, and really council, to be able to come in, hit the ground running, and have some lead time to be able to get their feet on the ground before they have to deal with the budget. The budget has to be introduced to council, the budget for the remaining 9 months, because we'll pass in December a temporary budget for the first 3 months. but for the remaining 9 months, that budget has to be introduced by February 1st and into council. And that's not a long time. So we're going to have to finalize a lot of things, get things ready, brief the new administration on things. The same thing with some of our operation cluster, some of the things that we're doing there, and other things we're doing at our rec centers with the prevention and intervention and trauma and toxic stress and the preventive side of crime and things like that. All these kind of things. We have academy classes for all the public safety currently in session. We have to get it so that we can have another test ready to go, or at least, if not completely ready, at least on its way, because as we graduate cadets, what will happen in police, fire, and EMS, we'll have attrition. And if we get bogged down, meaning the next mayor gets bogged down and not know how to move that along in terms of having academy classes and tests and civil service, all that kind of stuff, then what will happen is by the time they figure it out, it would be the end of next year, and that means that the attrition rate will far outstrip any number of people who will be able to graduate in next year. So we'll have a reduction in policemen, a reduction in firefighters, a reduction in EMS and paramedics, as opposed to maintaining at minimum and hopefully increasing the number of people who we have out on the street. So all those types of things, these are just mechanical, technical things that the next mayor may or may not be aware of, but they will also bring in a new directors, new cabinet, and they will be responsible for making these things happen for whoever the new mayor is. So we want to hand over something that will allow them to be able to hit the ground running and not lose time or lose a step.
The next question is from Garrison, a reporter at today.
Mhm.
He has a couple questions.
Okay.
Can you discuss the status of Cleveland's plans for the American Rescue Plan funds? It appears you hope to use some of those funds on affordable housing. What are these plans and why is this a priority? When would you like Cleveland's ARP plans to be approved by council? And do you have concerns that the transition in the mayor's office could further slow getting these funds out the door? Thank you.
Well, it's a bunch of questions, and it is around the Recovery Act money, and they're asking, what is our plan? I'll just give you the plan, rather than me trying to recite it. I'll just give you the plan, and we'll get it to you. You know, my people will get your name and just send it to you, and then you can have an accurate report of what it is we're proposing. That, along with what council has already done in a couple of areas, particularly around the food bank and I think broadband, those kind of things. But your other part of your question was, when would we like it passed? Well, of course, I would, we've introduced the legislation, and we have a clear, lady, look at this. Hold on a minute. They got something on the screen here. Okay. All right. Something was going to cut us off. So we have it over there. Yes, I would like to have it passed. Council will do their due diligence to have their hearings and things like that. We like to have it passed before the end of the year. And mind you that the next mayor and the next council will have $255 million in May to program and appropriate for whatever purposes they see fit to do that for. And the transition in the mayor's office is not holding that up, because we have done everything that we need to do. if you want to know if in fact it was the plan in terms of it being appropriated officially this year. It's more of a councilmatic question than a mayor question, because we've done everything that we are supposed to do is sitting over there now.
So Anthony asked, Mayor, how do you feel about the gang and the nice unit?
How do I feel about the gang and the nice unit? Well, I actually, the nice unit, it was my idea along with Chief Williams' idea. We discussed that and came up with that approach as to a way to have a quick mobile unit respond to hotspots all over the city. And they report they're more of a direct report to the chief. And so so of course I like it because I helped the chief form it. The gang unit has been around a long time, and they have a lot of institutional knowledge and in terms of not only general activity of what's going on, but the various individuals engaged and stuff. And one of the great benefits of that is that you don't lose that type of thing with the transition of a mayor, because or even the transition of a new chief, you would lose that. So is it what they have and information they have and the way in which they function, I think they do a relatively good job. Depending on who you talk to, some people like them, some people don't. Most people don't like them are the ones who they're pursuing. But the ones who do like them are the ones who see their neighborhoods are more peaceful and better off as a result of them being there.
Mark Ackerman from Channel 5 has a follow-up.
Mhm.
He has a couple. One is, you mentioned specialty police unit last night.
Right.
Correct.
Mhm.
Is the homicide solve rate acceptable? Is the homicide unit properly staffed?
Is the homicide solve rate acceptable? Is it properly staffed, meaning homicide? Um, if you do not have 100% solved, then it's not acceptable. It's just that simple. I don't care if it was 99% solve rate is not acceptable. Usually people who ask that type of question in general don't really understand the nature of homicides as we have them today. And those homicides many times, in the past, there's been homicides where people actually knew each other or crimes of past, all these kind of things. Now there's a different breed of homicide out there now that is less identifiable and more difficult to trace, particularly if you have a fear factor going on in the neighborhood in which it occurred. Now, the street knows everything, but the street doesn't tell everything, especially to the police. And so no, 60% is not acceptable. 99% would not be acceptable. And in terms of the number of people, I imagine having not just homicide detectives, but people who are supportive of them, whether they're crime analysis people, whether they're crime scene investigators that handle forensics, whether there are other types of people who support and supply information. Our real-time crime center and the technology associated with that, it will take us a long way in helping to identify things and to move things along quickly and be able to quickly respond to situations when they happen, as opposed to coming later and then having to attempt to question people who were around there, what you saw, and many of whom may be scared and not willing to tell you. So it's always good to have more people. You know, where those people are placed, I would think that having homicide detectives more would probably be good. That's why having these graduation classes, and that's why uh, uh, having one in session now, and having one a lateral class coming, and then having another opening for testing for another class. See, all this stuff is part of keeping up with attrition, so that you have enough people so you can deploy into specialized units and deploy into zone calls to answer 911. It's all part of it. And that's why my point was before that if a mayor and whoever it is he has to support him on this doesn't hit the ground running in that regard, or lacks knowledge of those things, it would fall behind quickly, and you'll lose ground very quickly. And it takes you lose the ground quickly. It takes a long time to catch up. So yeah, more homicide detectives, fine. If we can do it without taking people out of zone cars who are doing response to 911. And the other thing is having to identify not just homicide detectives, but those people who support them, that gives them the information that they need for them to do their job more efficiently, so that they don't have to be doing a lot of this footwork. That's also important.
Reporter from USA, Joey Garrison,
Mhm.
asked if you could just touch on the part of the plan that you're proposing for affordable housing, your affordable housing component.
Well, affordable housing, again, you get a better conversation out of my director of community development, who actually put that plan together for me. But it is something around how do we invest in affordable housing, whether it may be uh, uh, helping to uh, buy down um, mortgages with second mortgage out of the Recovery Act, whether we are investing in decreasing interest rates so the monthly payments will be less. If we're looking at rehab of old abandoned structures and bringing them back online. And the key here is in making them affordable is what is the market value in that area, and what it costs to do the renovation or new construction, and what's the gap between the renovation, new construction, and the market value, which the banks will loan at, and whether or not they will loan at not just 100%, maybe 110%, 115%, which allows for people to get be able to borrow enough money so they don't have to put a huge amount of money down, as we assist on some of that second mortgage. But there's something people have to pay, and may not be able to come up with a huge amount of down payment to cover the gap between the market and what banks will loan. So we look at those kind of things without creating a predatory lending situation. So it is my community development director would be ideal person for you to talk to. Now, we continue to work. uh, We just don't rely on Recovery Act money. The Recovery Act money will go into major developments, and it'll go into uh, just infield development, those kind of things for housing. But, we still have tax credit housing initiatives through nonprofits. We still have Habitat for Humanities. CMHA received a $35 million of a grant from HUD that we will be investing in their Woodhill estate in Woodhill Buckeye, the greater Woodhill Buckeye community. All of that will uh, monies coming from the Recovery Act and other monies that we have will also assist that $35 million. And that, all of that will help to provide for affordable housing. I hope that helps you, but if you want to know the specific details, it is in our proposal. And the Director of Community Development, Mr. Wacker, he's the one who put it together for me, and I looked at it and we tweaked it and finally approved whatever it is we agreed upon. He would be the one that could give you the details.
Mark Ackerman asked, back on your tenure as mayor, what are you most proud of?
Looking back, what I'm most proud on, I ain't finished yet. I'm not avoiding this. I'm serious when I tell you that I know I'm retiring, but I have, I remember when I was in the Army and I was over in Vietnam, you did a tour of duty, and the closer it got to the end of your tour, we called ourselves short timers. And whenever you're a short timer, you adopt that attitude of short timer, and believe me, your behavior changes. And so I'm not trying to adopt a short timer mentality or behavior right now. I'm trying to maintain the intensity and focus on getting a lot of things done, which have to get done. But I will answer that question once I'm fully out of here, and once I have fully adopted the realization that I am retired. So I will answer that question. I just, my mind is not there right now.
Okay, Mayor, Justin Boggs, from Spectrum, what advice do you have for the next mayor on addressing the increase to gun homicides? And do you think there are ways beyond gun laws of reducing gun homicides in Cleveland?
What is my advice to next mayor around gun homicides, and do I think there's a way to reduce gun homicides besides, I guess, gun control? Is that what he's asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's saying, yeah, and what do you think and do you think there are ways beyond gun laws?
Beyond gun laws, okay. Well, what I would advise the next mayor in regards to gun violence is don't be naive. It's just that simple. Don't be naive about this. This is business, and the people out there who use guns, whether it is to rob you, whether it is to kill you, whatever it is, this is business with them. They are not playing. So being academic and theoretical about this does not work. And so, and if you want to tie the hands of the police in regards to that, then good luck, brothers. I'm telling you, because many times the only thing between you, meaning the public, and that person of violence is that police officer. And I will tell you, as much as I hear about the police, I've yet to have a citizen call me and tell me, don't have them come over here. If we get calls, it's about when are you going to send some more? And so, particularly in those neighborhoods who have a high incident of violence, gun violence, robberies, and homicides, and felonious assaults. So just don't be naive about this thing. It's not a philosophical or academic debate or some ideological approach to life. This is reality. And them dudes out in the street, they don't deal in philosophy. They don't deal in ideology. They just deal in what they deal with. And they serious about it too, believe me. And now, in terms of what else you could do, other than gun laws, you have to deal with the underlying cause of why people do what they do. And it's a long-term thing, but it does come down to in institutionalized inequities, disparity, and racism. I know it's something that people talk about, and they have written PhD papers on it, have debates and discussion about it. And that seems to be the problem, because there's a lack of real implementation and execution of getting rid of inequities and getting rid of disparities and eradicating racism. And this is not just a government issue. This is a society issue. And it's being, it permeates all of our society, public, private, and philanthropic. And until we begin as a community, as a city, to address this and not accept things and then move in the direction of it first admitting of, and then the strategic investment in the elimination of, and then the execution of things that will have impact on this institutional inequities, disparity, and racism. We have to do it. And until you do that, you're going to have a problem. Let me remind you, everyone, that every ethnic group that's come to America has engaged in organized crime and in violent organized crime because they were locked out of the wealth and power of America based on some discriminatory practice that resulted in inequities and disparity. That was only eliminated, and those groups became assimilated to America and became productive parts of America when they were allowed to participate in the prosperity and the quality of life. And that inequity and disparity and that bias and prejudice was eliminated in association with them. And they became good American citizens, great American businessmen and politicians and judges. It ain't no different. And until you do that for who you have traditionally locked out for centuries and generations, until you do that, you're going to have the problem you have.
Couple comments.
Mm-hmm.
Big man says time for the city.
A citizen said, we need the term limit. It's far too long for any public official. I just tell them, look at the state of Ohio and see what term limits has done in terms of how this state sometimes makes decisions and how they do musical chairs of going from House of Representatives to Senate and then back to the House. People figure out a way around everything. And if you're looking for good government and you think you're going to legislate it, or you're going to create a process that's going to limit good government, promote good government, you're naive. It's not going to happen. Good government comes from the individual, whether they're here 16 years or 1 year. Good government. You could be here 16 years and be the worst person in the world, and you're going to get that result. You can be here 16 years and do good things, you'll get that result. The same thing happens if you're here for 4 years and you put a term limit on it. 2 terms, all right, they're out. So what? Big deal. What have they done in 2 years? What have you done in 2 years? What's happening with, just because you set up a process doesn't mean that you're going to get the end that you desire. This is about people. It is about the individuals. It is about the intent and the will of that individual, about people. People run this show. This is our beehive. This is our ant colony. This is ours. We run this show. And how it runs and how it behaves and what the outcome it is based on the integrity of us, not based on some term limits. Okay.
Blessings, Mayor Jackson. I love and salute you. Amen. 100 times 100. Exclamation marks. Strength. Muscle. Arm. He also said your legacy has been great. And we love and appreciate you and your service to our city and our community. Goes on to say, Louis Stokes and my mom, Wanda Marie Tyree, is proud of you.
Mm. Well, I got a compliment, so I'm going to say thank you to that compliment.
I am not going to read a remark. I'm just going to post it something else. Monday said, Mayor, thanks for your service. In my opinion, you've been a person who has demonstrated great integrity, loyalty, and being transparent. My family and I appreciate you and your knowledge of, quote, knowing the game.
Another compliment, and I appreciate that.
A gentleman named Mike Steele said, poorest large city in the United States.
Poorest large city in the United States. Well, you know, people, it depends on what you look at and who's reporting what, and the statistics are the statistics, but there's no question that Cleveland is a city that has a large population of poverty. And again, I'll go back to saying that's because that's no different than, like I say, every ethnic group that's come to America has been relegated to ghettos and poverty and slum conditions and exploitation of and all that stuff. And so it just so happens that there are certain groups of people who that seems to be a perpetual thing, generation after generation. And because there's no allowance of that group to assimilate into prosperity and quality of life. And as long as that persists, we will have poverty, and it will get worse. And part of the problem is that we tend to believe that we can do charity and welfare to address it, and that's a big mistake. If the only way it's going to truly be addressed is a full access to the quality of life and prosperity as all other groups who have come to America have been able to access. And when that happens, you'll see poverty go down. And that is when what I call the great city, the city where all share in quality of life and prosperity. We're not there yet. We're nowhere near it. And the person who made the comment about Cleveland being a large city with a lot of poverty, I guess he's talking about per capita, because we're not the biggest city in the world, and we're less than 400,000 people. But if you imagine you went to Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, even Atlanta, you would find levels of poverty. So the question is, what proportion, based on per 100,000 people, what is that rate? And if he's saying that rate means that Cleveland is one of the worst in terms of that, then that may be. One final thing on that, and then I'll let it be. We passed Fannie Lewis law. I developed that when I was in Cleveland City Council I was council president. I was working with the building trades back then, and we came to an agreement. And 20% of all of the work hours in large scale development construction would be with Cleveland residents. No matter black, white, Hispanic, male, female, Cleveland resident. And it had a significant impact in terms of the employment of Cleveland resident, particularly if they were in the building trades, right? And then we had a part in there around, we worked with the building trades to turn Max Hayes into a pre-apprenticeship where we'd have young people going to Max Hayes High School, being trained in a pre-apprenticeship program. So when they left there, they would go into the building trades. So we were bringing young people in, and then had people who lived in Cleveland, at least 20% of the work hours. Talk term limits to the term limit person. We know the state of Ohio passed legislation prohibiting us from doing that, even though it was successful for over a decade. And we demonstrated its success in how it was employing people and bringing people who would be unemployable into a career of the building trades. They found that to be uncovered. Why? Because they didn't want to share. They didn't want to share in the prosperity of construction, particularly since then President Obama opened up the ability for the federal transportation dollars to be used in local ways around hiring practice for work hours similar to our Fannie Lewis law. So they challenged this, special interests, lobbyists, term limits, and they found our law to be unenforceable. And so now we can't enforce it as we were able to enforce it before. And it's had some significant impact. So yes, we're poverty. And yes, there will continue to be poverty as long as those kind of actions persist.
Mary, we wrap up just a couple things. Lee Chillicoe from the land clarified that the land is not a recycling organization. They are a media outlet. They're nonprofit. He had several questions for follow-up on the recycling that we're going to have answered.
All right. Well, land is not an advocate for but they are. They may not be an advocate for recycling, but they are in the mindset and the mold that would be very supportive of recycling, and I appreciate that. And that's why I say it to them that they have a role to play also in informing people of the facts. They have a role to inform people of the facts, because I'm pretty sure that that the publication has probably more knowledge than I have about the whole recycling industry now, and what's going on not just in Cleveland but throughout the United States in regards to recycling. So they have in many respects, have a much larger bully pulpit than I have, because they're a publication, and their credibility may be better than mine because people know that they are supportive of that thing. Well, I've been supportive of it also, but I guess when you become an elected official or politician, you're judged in a different way.
So we're going to follow up on his follow-up questions.
But we will follow up on it, on all your follow-up questions. But I just want you to understand that we're not against recycling, we're for it, but we're also responsible for uh, for the city of Cleveland and its financing and its operation. And so when we saw this thing going in a way that was harmful to us in terms of our financing, and was completely impractical for our operation in terms of recycling, we had to change, and we did. So I think that context needs to be expressed in your publication.
One more question and then a comment, Mayor, and then we're going to wrap up.
One more question.
Will you support bringing back the Fannie Lewis law to the city of Cleveland?
I'd sue the state to keep it from doing it, from taking it away. So would I support it? Look, if it were up to me, it would have never gone away. As I said, I created it when I was council president, working with the building trades. And so would I support it coming back? Of course I would. That's why we sued the state of Ohio in terms of them saying that we could not enforce our law. So that's not the issue with me supporting it. That's not the issue. The issue is whether or not someone's going to ask that question to to the legislature in Columbus that passed the law in the first place, prohibiting us from enforcing it. That's the question.
Okay, Mayor.
What else?
In closing, say the last comment from Ms. Karen Brent. Well said. Thank you for your professionalism. You're a good man. Continued prayers for you and your family, and best wishes in your retirement.
Another comment good comment for me, so I'm gonna say I appreciate that. And again, I thank you for tuning in, and I will keep you updated on these things as we move forward. Okay? Thank you.